Politics in Nigeria is like a stage play that never ends. Every week, something new comes up. One day, it is quiet. The next day, the whole country is buzzing with noise. That is exactly what happened when Nyesom Wike, the former governor of Rivers State and now the minister of the Federal Capital Territory, decided to open his mouth in his usual bold way. Wike is not the kind of man who whispers. He is not the type who hides behind polite language. When he wants to talk, he talks with his chest out and his voice raised. He enjoys being direct, sometimes too direct, and he always finds a way to stir the air. So, when he sat down and began to speak, it was no surprise that he came with fire. The topic turned sharply toward Peter Obi. Out of nowhere, Wike began to throw words in Obi's direction. He spoke with his usual confidence, as if he had a personal score to settle, and he made sure the name Peter Obi stayed in the middle of his speech. Now, the name Obi is not just a name. It carries weight. It carries meaning. It carries emotion for millions of Nigerians. Whenever his name comes up, people stop to listen. Some feel hope. Some feel anger. But one thing is sure: nobody feels nothing. Obi's name has become like a drumbeat. Once you hear it, your attention is immediately drawn. So, when Wike mentioned him, everything changed. The tone of the conversation shifted. The mood became heated. It was not just Wike talking anymore, it was Wike pulling Obi into the center of his show. But here is the twist: Wike's focus was not on the real problems that Nigerians wake up to face every single day. He was not talking about the hunger in the land. He was not talking about the corruption eating into the system like termites in wood. He was not talking about insecurity that has turned many lives upside down. Instead, his energy was aimed at Obi, a man who was not even in his office, not even holding government power at that moment. This is what made the situation loud. Nigerians are not fools. They know when attention is being shifted. They know when someone who has a big responsibility on his shoulders suddenly chooses to leave it aside and start dragging another man's name into the spotlight. And this time, it was clear: Wike had chosen to speak about Obi instead of focusing on the heavy duties waiting for him as the minister of the FCT. Day by day, the noise grew. The more Wike's words spread, the more people's ears stood up. But at the center of all the noise was one big question: will Obi reply? That question was hanging in the air like a song stuck on repeat. Nigerians know Obi's style. He is not the type to rush into a shouting contest. He is not the type to waste his time exchanging insults. He carries himself differently. His focus is usually on issues: poverty, insecurity, corruption, and how the country can move forward. But because Wike had spoken so loudly, because his words carried weight, because his position as FCT Minister made him a big figure, many people wanted to see if Obi would break his silence. The suspense was almost like a movie. People kept wondering, would Obi ignore it? Would he remain calm and quiet, letting Wike's words fall to the ground? Or would he finally step forward, not with insults, but with a straight reply that would cut through the noise? Wike, on his part, seemed satisfied with his style. He had released his words like arrows. Whether they landed or not, he had done his part. But what made his move interesting was that he was dragging attention away from the real fight, away from poverty, away from corruption, away from insecurity. And Nigerians could see it. They could feel it. They live with these problems every day. They know what matters and what does not. They know when leaders are shifting focus. They know when someone is trying to create smoke to cover fire. So, while Wike was loud, Nigerians were waiting for Obi's calm. While Wike was pulling drama, Nigerians were waiting for Obi's logic. While Wike was going for noise, Nigerians were waiting for Obi's clarity. That waiting created tension. That silence created drama of its own. Sometimes, silence is louder than words, and that was the stage Obi found himself standing on. He had not yet spoken, but the world was already listening for his voice. In homes, in offices, in quiet corners, people talked about it. In buses and taxis, the gist was rolling. In the marketplaces, whispers spread. And still, the question remained, what will Obi say? It was not just about one man replying another. It was about two different styles of leadership. On one side was Wike, the man of drama, the man who loved to speak boldly, the man who never backed down from a war of words. On the other side was Obi, the man of calm, the man who rarely engaged in distractions, the man who chose to keep attention on the issues that mattered most. That is why the noise became more than just noise. It became a stage, a drama, a moment of suspense. The people were not just listening to Wike's words. They were watching for Obi's reaction. They were waiting for his response, and in that waiting, the story became bigger than Wike himself. And so, Chapter 1 ended not with an answer, not with a resolution, but with tension. Wike had spoken loudly. The air was filled with noise. But Obi had not yet replied. His silence was holding everyone's attention, and the weight of that silence was even heavier than the words that had already been thrown into the air. This was the beginning of the storm. When the noise had reached its peak and everyone was waiting, Peter Obi finally spoke. He did not call a press conference filled with drama. He did not storm into a studio to shout back. He did not throw insults around like stones in the marketplace. Instead, he chose his usual path, simple, calm, but powerful. His words came straight, without any twist or decoration. He said that leaders should not waste time dragging names in the public space. Leaders should not reduce politics to gossip sessions. Leaders should not pour energy into unimportant matters when the real problems of the country are staring everyone in the face. And then came the line that hit the hardest. Obi said, "We should be fighting for how to eliminate poverty, how to remove corruption, and how to deal with insecurity. That is what should be our focus, not wasting energy talking about me over things Nigerians already know the truth about." The statement was not long. It was not complex. It was not filled with heavy grammar. But it carried weight. It carried truth. It carried direction. Obi's style has always been to keep attention on issues. And this time again, he did not fail. While Wike had tried to drag him into side battles, Obi refused to step off the main road. He pointed everyone back to the pressing matters that Nigerians face every single day. Think about it, poverty is not a small issue. In many homes, families go to bed with little or no food. Children are hungry. Parents are tired. The cost of living rises like a balloon that never stops climbing. People hustle every day, yet their pockets remain empty. Poverty is like a shadow that follows millions across the country. That was what Obi was pointing to. He was saying, let us use our energy to fix this. Then he moved to corruption. Nigerians know this one too well. It is like a sickness that refuses to go away. From the top offices down to small agencies, corruption has eaten deep. Money that should build hospitals, schools, and roads ends up in private pockets. Projects that should change lives never see the light of day. Obi was saying, this is the enemy, not endless words about him. And then insecurity. Everyone knows the fear in the land. Farmers afraid to go to their farms. Traders afraid to travel on highways. Families worried about safety even inside their own homes. Every day, stories of attacks, kidnappings, and violence spread. Obi was reminding everyone, this is the real battle we must fight together. So, in just a few words, Obi turned the spotlight away from himself and back to the issues. He refused to allow himself to become the distraction. Instead, he made the issues stand tall once again. What made his response even more powerful was the tone. He did not sound bitter. He did not sound angry. He did not even sound disturbed. He sounded steady, as if he had been waiting for the right moment to remind Nigerians of what truly matters. That calmness carried strength. People who heard his reply felt the difference. Some said his words were like cold water poured on hot fire, it cooled the noise immediately. Others said it was like switching off loud music so people could hear the silence in the room. Whatever image people used, One thing was certain, Obi's reply changed the atmosphere. While Wike's words had created noise, Obi's words created focus. While Wike spoke about Obi, Obi spoke about Nigeria. That was the difference. That was the sharp line that separated the two. In politics, words are powerful. They can build, they can scatter, they can distract, and they can direct. Obi's words this time acted like a compass, pointing Nigerians back to north, back to the real journey, back to the road of nation building. It was also a lesson in leadership. Leadership is not about shouting the loudest. Leadership is not about throwing blame. Leadership is not about dragging names around. Leadership is about showing direction, about reminding people of the real problems and pointing the way forward. Obi's reply, though short, was a lecture on that truth. Some observers said that Obi's silence before replying was also part of his strength. By waiting, he allowed the noise to rise to its peak. And then, when people were fully tuned in, his calm words dropped like a stone into water, creating ripples that spread far. Timing is also part of wisdom, and Obi showed that clearly. What made his response entertaining in its own way was the contrast. Wike's style is thunder, loud, shaking, impossible to miss. Obi's style is lightning, sudden, sharp, and striking where it matters most. One creates endless sound, the other creates clear impact. Nigerians witnessed both, and the difference was crystal clear. As his words spread, many people felt a sense of relief. Finally, someone had shifted the conversation back to what matters. Finally, someone had refused to be dragged into distraction. Finally, someone had reminded leaders that the job is not about gossip, but about solving poverty, ending corruption, and securing lives. That is why his reply was more than just an answer to Wike. It was a reminder to the whole political class. It was a message to every leader holding office. It was a call to attention, telling them, enough of the noise, let us face the work. And that message did not just float in the air. It landed in the hearts of Nigerians. People repeated his words. They discussed it in their homes. They shared it in their groups. It became a simple but strong call: focus on poverty, focus on corruption, focus on insecurity. Obi's calm voice had done what shouting could not do. It had redirected the national conversation. It had reminded the people that leadership is about service, not side battles. It had shown once again that sometimes, the most powerful words are the simplest ones. And so, with one short reply, Obi broke his silence. He turned down the noise. He pointed to the real issues. He gave Nigerians something to think about, something bigger than drama, something more important than endless quarrels. That was the moment his silence ended, and his clarity began. When Obi's reply finally landed, it was like a stone thrown into a still river. The ripples moved wide and far. People who had been tired of endless back and forth suddenly felt a shift. His words did not come with drama, yet they carried the strength of truth. They were not many, but they were enough to move the conversation away from noise and back to the real fight. What made it even more striking was how Obi's reply connected with the daily struggles of ordinary Nigerians. Every family in the country knows the weight of poverty. Every household has felt the sting of corruption. Every community has lived under the shadow of insecurity. When Obi said leaders should focus on these three things, it was like he was echoing the cry of the people themselves. People could relate immediately. Parents thought about their children and nodded. Traders thought about their small businesses and agreed. Students thought about their uncertain futures and whispered, "This is true." Workers thought about their salaries that never last till the end of the month and felt the honesty in his words. Obi was not talking theory. He was not speaking in riddles. He was describing the exact pain that Nigerians live with every single day. The beauty of his reply was also in the contrast. Wike had chosen to make it personal. He had spoken about Obi in a way that looked like a direct call-out. But Obi flipped the script. Instead of returning the personal attack, he turned it into a national message. He reminded everyone that leadership is not about individuals but about the collective suffering and the collective future of the people. That was why his reply did not just silence noise, it turned into a teaching moment. Nigerians began to reflect. The real question shifted from "what did Wike say?" to "what are we doing about poverty, corruption, and insecurity?" That was a masterstroke. It showed that words, when wisely chosen, can change the entire direction of a conversation. And the more people thought about it, the clearer it became. Poverty has chained millions, corruption has stolen billions, and insecurity has destroyed countless dreams. These three are the enemies that should unite everyone, no matter their party, no matter their tribe, no matter their position. Obi was pointing at them as the real battlefield, not a political quarrel. In homes, people repeated his words. In offices, workers used his lines as examples during their discussions. In markets, sellers joked about it but still agreed it was true. On buses, passengers debated how poverty, corruption, and insecurity have affected their lives directly. In every corner, Obi's reply was spreading not as gossip but as wisdom. It also showed a leadership style that Nigerians have long desired. A leader who does not waste time on distractions. A leader who does not take every attack as a reason for battle. A leader who stays focused on the main road no matter the noise around him. That kind of focus is rare, and that is why people held on to his words with so much respect. The impact of his reply also went beyond the citizens. Politicians themselves could not ignore it. Those in power heard it. Those outside power heard it. For some, it was a gentle rebuke, a reminder that people are watching and waiting for results, not endless quarrels. For others, it was inspiration, showing that it is possible to rise above petty fights and still command attention. Another thing that made Obi's message strong was the timing. He did not rush. He did not allow himself to be dragged into a quick reaction. He allowed the noise to roll around until everyone was waiting for his voice. And when he finally spoke, the timing made his words heavier. It was like waiting for a drumbeat that comes after long silence. It hits stronger than when it comes too quickly. Many Nigerians felt a sense of pride that day. Pride that someone could show maturity in the face of provocation. Pride that someone could choose issues over drama. Pride that their struggles were finally the center of the conversation again. For them, Obi's reply was not just about him, it was about a style of leadership that respects the people's pain. It was also entertaining in its own unique way. Not entertainment through shouting or quarreling, but entertainment through clarity. Sometimes, people do not need noise to stay engaged. Sometimes, what holds attention is simplicity mixed with truth. And that was exactly what Obi served. His calmness became the entertainment. His wisdom became the show. His focus became the performance that everyone was watching. The effect lingered. Even after the noise of Wike's earlier words began to fade, Obi's reply stayed. It stayed because it spoke to real life. Hunger does not vanish in a day. Corruption does not disappear overnight. Insecurity does not stop at once. These are lasting issues, and Obi's words reminded everyone of their weight. That is why his response became more than a reply. It became a message, a slogan, a call to action. Leaders were reminded, citizens were reminded, even critics were reminded that the true measure of politics is not in personal battles but in national victories over poverty, corruption, and insecurity. So in the end, the story was not about Wike throwing words. The story was not about Obi defending himself. The story was about Obi taking a loud moment of distraction and turning it into a calm moment of direction. That is what shifted the attention. That is what hit home. And as people reflected on it, they saw the difference between noise and vision. Noise rises and fades. Vision rises and stays. Obi chose vision. That is why his words remained even after the sound of Wike's voice had gone quiet. So chapter 3 closed with a lesson. The message had landed. The truth had settled. Obi's reply was not just for Wike, not just for politicians, but for every Nigerian. It was a reminder that the real battles are not fought in studios or interviews. The real battles are fought in markets, in schools, in hospitals, in farms, in every home struggling against poverty, corruption, and insecurity. And that reminder was the true victory of his reply.